Hey everybody, thank you for coming. I'm Joe Landry, and this is an episode of Once Upon a Town. And today we're going to talk about the Rome Restaurant Block. And with me today is my good friend, Scott Mason. Scott, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm honored to be your first guest.
Thank you. Well, so let's talk about the Rome Restaurant Block. That block had 4 buildings on it, and I think a lot of the Franklin residents from years ago can remember those 4 buildings. From left to right, there would have been the Miller Brothers Fish Market Building, the Franklin Bakery Building, the James P. McKinnon Grocery Store Building, and the Edward E. King Barbershop Building. So what I do is I like to tell you where my sources come from. The Franklin Register, that happened to be the first newspaper in Franklin. And they published from 1875 or so. And then in 1878, the Franklin Sentinel took over. And they lasted for about 100 years or so. Stanley Chilson provided a wealth of information with all his films and everything, and you'll see a lot of those pictures. The Sanborn Fire Insurance maps provide me with a lot of good information, personal pictures and postcards, and I'm really glad to say that Jim and Beth Kulacci, who own the Rome Restaurant today, they're here, and they gave me some nice pictures too, so you'll see those. And of course, I always like to give a shout out to the Franklin Historical Museum. There are a lot of wonderful exhibits. I know Scott has exhibits for his railroad presentation and dioramas, so it's a really great place to go. I highly recommend it. So here's a Sanborn Fire Insurance map from 1894. And as you can see, those are the 4 buildings that were there. And this is Cottage Street, Central Street. I like to point that out because Central Street was the one street through Franklin from Bellingham to Wrentham. In 1913, they made it East Central and West Central at the bridge. That was the dividing point. But anyways, the detail shows the 4 buildings: the Miller Brothers Fish Market Building, the Franklin Bakery, the James P. McKinnon Grocery Store Building, and the Edward E. King Barbershop Building.
I think, Joe, the thing that stands out to me in looking at the Sanborn map and looking at how the layout of that space is today is how much it's changed. But also, how did they fit 4 buildings into that little space? If you stand on the bridge, or don't stand on the bridge, you'll probably get hit by a car, but if you stand across the street and you look at that space, it's so hard to reconcile that there was that much there at that time.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, they were relatively small buildings by today's standards. I mean, especially the one on the Edward E. King Barbershop Building. We'll be talking about that. We'll know that was Bullock and Oil used to have that building. And that's a relatively small building. In fact, it was almost hanging on the cliff of going down to the railroad tracks. But yeah, you're right. It's true. Yeah. So the first one we'll go from left to right. Left to right. First building we'll talk about is the Miller Brothers Fish Market Building. That stood at the corner of Cottage and East Central Street. And I'll refer to it as East Central because that's what it is today. And this is from the early 1900s. And that's the block as it appeared in 1934. And the arrow's pointing to the Fish Market Building. Then 1879, there's this drawing of the downtown Franklin. And the level of detail is pretty good. You'll see in the 1888 drawing, it's really good. But this one shows a fairly good scale. Shows the Miller Brothers Fish Market Building, and the one next to it was the Franklin Bakery Building. And then you can see West Central Street, East Central, et cetera. And then this is the 1888 drawing, much more definition. And it's from a different angle too. Again, you can see East Central, West Central Street, Cottage Street, and the Fish Market Building. So in September, this is a notice that was in the September of 1875 Franklin Sentinel. It reported that a new building was being constructed at the corner of Cottage and East Central Street by William H. Spear. And he also owned the block across the street, over where, kind of close to where Jimmy's Ice Cream used to be. And so, yeah. And then here's an advertisement from February of 1883 that talks about the fish market. And the Miller's brothers were George W. and James W. Miller. Love some of these advertisements, what they say in their parties desirous of having car teams our team stop at their residence should leave a word at the market. No telephones back then.
It's also interesting, Joe, how often change took place.
Oh, yeah.
You know, things like fires changed the landscape, but just development in general. These types of notices were in the paper on a regular basis. I think if you blinked, you probably missed development.
It's true. And then in the fish market, there was 2 stores. The one on the left was the fish market, but the one on the right was used as a barber shop. And Fred Field apparently had purchased a barber shop in the Millers Brothers building on the corner of Central and Cottage, and we'll keep it running. It's full of enthusiasm and push. I know, huh?
Journalism has changed slightly.
Oh, yeah. You're going to see some of these clippings and the advertisements. They're a riot, some of them, really. And then in 1891, I noticed that it refers to the store as George W. Miller, now has a large and commodious fish market on the corner. And he serves customers with fish and hams and pig's feet, et cetera. So I'm kind of thinking, since his brother James is not mentioned in the ad, I'm kind of assuming that he probably withdrew from the business. Just a thought.
Again, you know, under the heading of how times change, how many of you, just search on a daily basis for a good source of pig's feet?
And sauerkraut.
And sauerkraut, yeah.
Yep.
And just even the wording commodious is not used all that often.
Yeah, no, commodious has been purged from our lexicon.
That's for sure. Now here's a notice in the August of 1901 Sentinel. It shows the name of the fish market now is called Payne's Fish Market, owned by Edward E. Payne. And on the other side of the sign, you can just see where it says laundry. And in the business directory, it showed that there was a laundry being operated by Wu Quang. So it must have been Chinese laundry, yeah. And then I happened to notice in the Franklin directory of 1893, it showed that Wu Quang on Central Square. Central Square was that area of Central Street in front of the Morse Opera House block, basically from Summer Street up to the bridge. They called that Central Square. Now, the new dining room upstairs in the second floor of the Fish Market building. Mrs. Jubb, formerly of the Methuen House in Main Street, I assume in Methuen, is now operating a dining room up there. And she's taking board by the day or week. Meals are served in to transients at all times. Everything neat and clean.
I would imagine too, Joe, that a place like that also served folks who were laying over that worked for the railroad.
Absolutely.
Franklin being a railroad junction at that point.
Absolutely.
Had rooms for rent that were rented specifically to railroad employees, engineers, and conductors and the sort.
That's right, because I know on Summer Street, I was friendly with the Thayer family, and his grandfather worked on the railroad and had a little apartment up there. And they used to have people there, so I totally agree. Yeah. And then the fish market changed hands. In August of 1910, Captain Edward Payne, he sold his fish market to Herbert Richardson. And he did that because of ill health. So he will restock the place, add some new lines, and endeavor to please the public, which is safe to say he will do.
That is very editorially optimistic.
I know it. Now, here's something that's very interesting. This notice from February of 1920 shows that a business corner with a large frontage and 2 buildings was being sold to settle an estate. The building at the corner and the one next to it were being sold. And this was the first of 3 notices that appear in the paper. You'll see February 17th, the 20th, and the 27th. And the copy's not that great. It's only because it's what they had online. And so what it says is, must be sold to settle an estate. It's a rare opportunity for a man with a bit of courage. So here's something that might come as a surprise. It was sold, the real estate broker sold it to Archie Vargin and Hugas Bilizarian. Archie Vargin. Did you know that?
Yeah.
You did, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you found that out.
Yeah.
By the state, like,
Yeah.
by surprise.
And he's your great-grandfather?
No, it's my great uncle.
Great uncle,
It was my
okay.
dad's.
All right, yep, I knew there was a connection there.
Yeah.
Yep. And Hugas Bilazarian, and what they did, they purchased it for $12,000. Pretty good deal. The purchases are now located at the present time, are located at Nason's Crossing, and they're buying this for occupancy and investment. So, in fact, just this morning I was looking at this one last time, and I said, Bilazarian, hey, I remember there was I've got a picture of a Bilazarian's market down on Union Street, and there it is. Now this is the Bulletin block that's down, this is across the street from today's Jimmy D's. There were these two buildings right there, and that's this one, Bilazarian store. So I bet you that was it. So these buildings came down, I think, in the late 50s, early 60s. I don't know if maybe people might not remember them. Yeah, you probably remember them. Yeah.
I'm looking at the prices. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's yeah. And then the fish market was now Moore's Fish Market, Francis Moore's Fish Market, 10 Central Street.
Fancy fresh fish.
Fancy fresh fish.
I think it would be enough just to be fresh.
I know. This picture is from February of 1928 and shows the fish market in the store to the left of the building and the Clarence Wetmore's watchmaker shop on the right. I zoomed in on that sign. That's Clarence Wetmore. I noticed that I've got a picture of the newly constructed Morse block after the fire, and he moved over there, and I got a picture of him in that store. So that's how I knew that was there. So. Now this is really interesting. During the 1930s, the Clark Square Diner was doing business in the store on the right side of the building when Francesco Brunelli owned that block. He bought it in the early 30s. But I struggled with this picture for the longest time. It almost looks like they took a diner, cut a hole in the building and stuck it in there. And that can't be right. Because I've seen later pictures to show the glass front back to regular glass front. The best I can come up with is that they took a diner car and really, literally cut off the end of it and put it on the front as a facade just to kind of give the appearance of a diner. And I thought about it, well, I know back in the early 30s, there was a guy named A.J. Riley who was trying to sell a lunch cart. And I'm just wondering, maybe that was that lunch cart and they just took advantage and chopped it off. I don't know. Whatever. And then the A.J. Riley, just to let you know, his widow owned 33 Cottage Street. And that's Tom Keefe bought that and became Keefe Funeral Home. Today it's Charlie Soteri's funeral home. Now, by 1935, Mr. Brunelli decided to move the Clark Square Diner to the building where the bowling alley was seen. We'll talk about that building in a few minutes. There was a bowling alley in there and a pool room.
How many lanes could they have possibly had in a building that size?
Well, you'd be surprised how small they were.
Yeah.
They weren't your typical long bowling alleys, and of course they had no pin setting machines. Mm-hmm. But there were so many bowling alleys downtown, like the YMCA building had a couple of them. Behind, everybody remembers Thunderbird Cleaners. There was a couple of bowling alleys in a building behind there. Mm-hmm. And we can't forget underneath the cinema block.
Yeah.
So there were bowling alleys all over the place. Oh, there was a bowling alley built behind where Newberry's is, the Newberry's parking lot. Behind the Exchange building, there was a bowling alley building there too. So they were all over the place.
And did you mention the YMCA?
Yeah, I just did.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So then after the fish market closed, Sal DiLorenzo established his barbershop where the fish market had done business. Victor Bazzini is the one who told me that Sal DiLorenzo was there. The building on the right, the store on the right was known as the Tip Top Shoe Hospital. I know it. And a guy named Ernest Bonifazi owned it up until the 1940s. Then he hired this young man because this young man kept selling these newspapers. He goes, you got to do better than that, Victor. You got to start working in a shoe store. I'm going to teach you the ropes. So he taught Victor how to repair shoes, and then in 1950, Victor Bazzini bought the store, and it became Bazzini Shoe Store. But no sooner did it happen that he bought the store, it's now the Korean War, so Victor had to in the service. And when he got out of service, then he started working in the store. And then in April 1950, under new management, Victor Bazzini, the Tip Top Shoe Hospital. Yeah. And then from 1966, he was selling Tom McCann shoes. And then in the same building, Helen's Sub Shop opened. And then the next building is the Franklin Bakery building. And that was run by a man named William Enegren, Jr. William Enegren, Jr. In that picture, the arrow shows that building. And the 1879 drawing shows that building. And the 1888 drawing shows that building. And then that 1888 drawing also had these tiny little drawings all around the drawing, and in really good detail too. It shows the building. You can see William Enegren Jr., but he called it the Franklin Bakery.
It's amazing in lieu of photographs how detailed these drawings actually were.
They did not have the ability or the luxury of being able to get up in a balloon or a helicopter and look down. So all this was done from the ground, and they must have walked around each building. It's phenomenal. And I often wondered how big this drawing actually was when it was finally drawn. I mean, was it this big? It could have been too small to get that kind of detail. Mm-hmm. And then the Sanborn map. Oh, and you can see there was an oven in the back. I remember Victor was telling me when he moved into that building, he says, you remembered that oven being in the back.
You also have to wonder too, you've got two buildings there that are angled, that have angles between them.
Yeah.
And what the reasoning was for that.
That's a good question.
To look at on the surface, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
You would think they would be squared up to each other and touching, but
Well, that's a good question. I really don't have an answer. Obviously, they did it to some scale, I would think, but yeah, I don't know.
that's your next episode.
Okay.
Just the one building that's out, the small one's square to the road.
Yeah.
That one building.
That one building, and the one they were built around the same time too. The grocery store building, we'll get to that in a minute, was the mid 1890s, and then the barber shop building was not much later. So yeah, it's a good. Yeah.
Now, I'm not suggesting that this is inaccurate in any way, but in my research with Sanborn maps over a couple of decades, they're probably about 75% accurate. You can't always take them at face value. And again, if you look at how they're drawn, how does anybody get a bird's eye view of what we're looking at on the screen there? There's no real means to do that. So, someone was putting incredible effort into just that rendering.
That's for sure. And then the Franklin Bakery had this ad in the 1884 Franklin Sentinel. And then, in January of 1890, it was reported that William Enegren had sold his business and would move it to his new bakery at Lake Pearl. Now, my experience has been that the Enegren family had quite a connection with Lake Pearl. Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah.
Do you know any more about that?
Well, they either owned or managed the property, the ballroom,
Okay.
for many years.
There you go.
Yeah, I would say up until the 90s.
This could be the beginning of it then. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. And then, in February, the next month, the Burns brothers opened that business. They will keep at the store a full line of their goods, making a specialty of beans and brown bread. Okay, they'll do good business on Saturday night, huh?
Yeah, my father would have been lined up for beans and brown bread.
Yeah. And then, in 1897, William A. Fairfield, former cook at the Hotel Briggs, is to open a bakery near the bridge in the building formerly used as a bake shop. Now, and then the following month, he opened it. William Fairfield is the guy that also put a lunch cart right next to the Metcalf block. And we know that as Main Street Diner, Joe's Diner. The very first lunch cart that was there was William Fairfield putting it there. It was a very small lunch cart. So he was the one that put the first car there. And then the remodeled bakery Now this, the William Enegren Bakery is now being called the Nile Home Bakery, and it would hardly be recognized in its new remodeling. There was but little left of the original bakery, one of the first in Franklin, and started by Arnold and Enegren. The old ovens were taken out and replaced by new ones, new floors and ceilings, and a stock room added above. And so on and so on. Yep. And then, a lot of us remember Soxy DeCecco. He had a place called Bouvier Furniture. And I assume that later he changed it to DeCecco Furniture, I think, right? I'm not sure about that. Is that true?
No, I don't.
You don't think so? Always Bouvier? Okay, yeah.
They were a furniture store in Woonsocket.
Oh, there were a furniture store in Woonsocket. Okay, yep. And then we mentioned the business corner was up for sale. And then Archie Vajam and Hogarth Bilzerian bought it. And then in 1932, Frank Grinelli and Sons, proprietor of the Nile Home Bakery, he also owned the other 3 buildings on the block too. Now let's talk about the James P. McKinnon Grocery Store building. James McKinnon has leased the land located between the building, formerly occupied by the land between the bakery building and the new King Barber Shop. We'll talk about that one in a few minutes. So that little plot of land, they put that building in crooked. And they commissioned the work to build it.
Was there a bar nearby?
I don't know. Probably.
'Cause that would explain it.
Wasn't a Rome restaurant, that's for sure.
No.
So anyway, he had previously done business in a building down on Union Street near Cottage Street. In fact, that's where that Bilzerian's Market was down there, in that same exact building. And then the 1899 detail shows those buildings that we just spoke about. So that's James McKinnon down there, and then he moved the store downtown to that building. And then in 1895, it shows the store at Central Square, and he was selling Van Camp's pure tomato ketchup, sold everywhere at 25 cents. He's selling for 19 cents. And then he just put in a new, listen to this one. He just put in a new computing scale, which automatically figures the price of the commodity at the same time that it gives the weight. Emerson, the market man, has one of those different construction, although both are considered a great convenience in the selling of goods. Nowadays, boop, boop, boop.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And then McKinnon, the grocery man, purchased the Hotel Briggs. Now you probably don't know where that was, but that was in the process of being torn down. And today the Felix Cataldo block, where the Franklin School for the Performing Arts is, they were tearing that down to build that block right there. So McKinnon, Mr. McKinnon, the grocery man, had just purchased the Hotel Briggs from these 2 sisters, and their names were Mary and Helen Modjeska, and they have just taken possession. So Mr. McKinnon had no practical experience as a Boniface, yet his genial good nature and his capacity for hard work ought to stand him well in good stand. His many friends trust that his labors will be crowned with abundant success.
Slow news day.
I know it. but thankfully, the Sentinel gave me a lot of good information for simple little stories like this.
You would never see a story like this today,
right.
but it's allowed you to put this presentation together as well as many of the others that you've done.
Although, I have to say, if you read the Franklin Sentinel quite a bit, on page 2 was A. Elizabeth Walsh had Around the Town column, and that was kind of like everything that was happening around town. So for many years, that column really gave a lot of good information, too. Now, Grocer McKinnon is preparing to close his grocery store so they could concentrate more on the hotel. And he sold all his goods at private sale and at auction. So in 1901, Rodney Moore was granted a license to install a bowling alley in that building where the McKinnon grocery store once did business. In May, he sold the bowling alley to E.A. Whiting, and in April 1902, John Stobart and George Wolford became managers of the Whiting Bowling Alley. In November of 1910, the selectmen granted a pool table and bowling alley permit to Chester Whiting, and in November of 1919, the pool table and bowling alley building were reopened under the management of William Brennan.
Now, it looks like a couple of things. So first of all, there's the horse trough
Yep,
that's still there.
still there.
But it also looks, if you look closely at the front of that, the Clark Square bowling, it looks like there's a pipe vise there, and it looks like they may be doing some plumbing work.
Oh, yeah.
I can't guarantee that, but boy, it sure looks like that's what it is.
Yeah, this
There's
is
some type of construction that's going on
Yeah, it
there.
was in 1934, so I don't know. This
A
is,
set of tanks there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that would explain probably the reason for the photograph.
okay, could be. Yeah, I mean, Stanley Chilson, this is April of 1934. Stanley Chilson took pictures of anything and everything. If something was happening, he was there.
I'd like to know how much Stanley Chilson spent on film. He could have really benefited from digital photography.
And who developed it for him?
Exactly.
Yeah, and who paid for it? And where did he find the time to do all this? Was he, did he work? I don't know. Now, 1935, the Clark Square Diner had moved from the building at the corner of East Central Street and Cottage into the Clark Square Bowling Alley building. And that's when they did away with that facade in the front and reverted it back to a store. And then a new front. The owners of the Clark Square Diner, this is 1947, the owners announced the establishment, they would have a new glass front along with other improvements, and they were going to rename it the Brunelli's Diner, because it was named after them. The new front on the Clark Square Diner is another step forward in the improvement of the Franklin Business District, a movement which is fast gaining momentum. And if you've been in the Rome restaurant recently, you'll see in the back where the back hall is, that's that clipping. It shows how it was the announcement of the grand opening of Brunelli's Diner that appeared in August of 1948. The diner was now equipped with air conditioning and was streamlined with upholstered booths. I think a lot of us remember the circular booths in the front. The advertisement also stated that American and Italian cooking at its best would be served 24 hours a day.
I'd like to know, by comparison, how those menu prices.
Oh, you're going to see. Don't
yeah.
you worry. You're going to see. And then there's a picture of the restaurant. My father took home movies, and he happened to take downtown, and he took that. I caught that off of there. So now, in the 50s, Brunelli's Diner would be sold to a guy named Nunzio Bonino, and he renamed it Kami's Restaurant. Kami was his wife, Carmela, and she was Carmela Sosi. Now this picture, the advertisement was taken from the yellow pages of the 1961 phone book, but the restaurant was named for the owner's wife, Carmela, better known as Kami. She was the sister of Gus Sosi, the doctor, the chiropractor. The picture of Kami was taken from her Franklin High School yearbook, so they renamed it Kami's Restaurant. And then in '64, good food, 10 Central Street, East Central Street, Kami's Restaurant. And then the grand opening of the Rome restaurant. In November of 1965, Eugenio and Filomena Colacci opened the new Rome restaurant. And we thank Jim and Beth for providing these pictures, as well as the following pictures and newspaper clippings. And there's the first menu.
Wow.
Now, I have to ask, did they hand type individual ones? They didn't have a copy machine back then. What did they do?
My father hand typed.
Well, let me write let me get a mic over here. We gotta hear this. Go ahead, Jim.
My father hand typed them, and you can, if you look closely, there was a lot of misspelled words. He was just trying to. I think he was just learning English back then, because when he came to this country in 1959, he didn't speak English, but he learned quickly.
Yeah. I'm sure you got the prices right, though. Wow. That's great. I was in the Rome some time ago, and I happened to have that picture, and I showed it to one of the waitresses. I said, hey, can we use this menu? They wouldn't let me, though. You got good workers. And here's a picture that Steve Narducci had posted on Facebook a few years ago. From left to right, they are Margaret Cody. I remember Margaret. Dorothy Fifi Tully. Let me tell you, Fifi was unbelievable. She lived across the street from me on Dean Avenue with her son Larry. And I'll tell you, she was funny. Oh, man. Jenny Narducci Guillemette, Jenny Narducci, Filomena Colaci, the owner, Betty Calucci, and Dolores Narducci. Did I get all the names right? Yep, okay, good. Yeah. And then the newspaper clipping from the Woonsocket Call from August of 1987, the restaurant had been heavily damaged by fire, and the demolition of the block had begun when this picture was taken. After the fall, the Rome now readies for the beginning of a new era. And then this picture was taken on the same day, and the man on the left is John Junior Martello, and Carmine Colaci is on the right. Carmine is the son of Eugenio and Filomena Colaci. While they were digging out the debris, Junior discovered an old coin and a whiskey bottle in the rubble. The coin read, Britannia 1797, and it had a picture of George III on it. And then lastly, the Edward E. King Barbershop building. In 1894, this detail shows that the barbershop was being built when this map was created. You can see it says being built. Now, Edward King previously had a barbershop across the street in the William H. Spear building. This is if you're looking toward, if you're standing on the bridge looking toward Rentham, and you can see where, in fact, that's where you can see where Jimmy's Ice Cream and Jimmy's Liquor Store would be on the left. That building was where today's A.J. Cataldo block is. And so it says Edward King had taken a room in the Spears block where he will tend to all wishing anything in the tonsorial line.
Now, so I'm a journalism major, and I've never heard of that word. I have no idea.
Tonsorial?
Yeah.
I've heard it. Tonsorial.
Someone was reaching deep when they wrote that.
Jeez, I know it. So the price cutting hair would be 25 cents. Shaving,
bits.
10 cents. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in May, listen to this, in May of 1894, they commenced work on building this building. The next month, he moved in. I find it hard to believe they built it in 1 month, but I'm only going by what the Franklin Sentinel reported. So the building was completed and he moved in. The picture was taken in 1934. Eventually, his son Edward would join the business, and it would be known as E.E. King and Son. That's why if you look really closely at the sign, you see it says E.E. King and Son.
Now, Joe, do you know if he was solely a barber? Because in those days, some barbers were also dentists. Unlicensed, because there wasn't really a licensing practice for them. But
that's a good question.
you could go in there and get your hair cut and get your molars pulled.
Wow. Okay, so, and then in January of 1944, H. Bullock and Sons moved into their building. They had previously done business in the Morse Opera House block when it had been established in 1898 by their father, Harry Bullock and Sr., who was seen here. Very dapper man, huh? I wonder, a lot of these old pictures, do you think that was a real mustache or was it fake? I'm wondering if they said, we're going to take your picture. You want to put a mustache on? Yeah, okay. Because I've got a picture of my great-grandfather, and I swear that's not his real mustache. I don't know. But I don't know, maybe it is. I don't know.
I think that was the style back then.
It probably was, yeah. So after being in the same location for 46 years, the firm of H. Bullock and Sons, local fuel dealers, would move on January 31st to 1 East Central Street. And it talks about back in 1898, Harry Bullock and Sr. took over the store from the Staples interests, and that was in the old Morse Opera House block. And they had done business many years in there. But in 1936, he retired and turned the business over to his sons. But I know that in 1944, they had to close that store because the World War II was happening, and because of rationing and everything, they were having trouble getting things. So then he turned the oil business over and the coal business to the two sons, Arthur and Harry Jr. And then H. Bullock and Sons painted up a sign. This is from this picture's from 1949, but in 1947 they put up a new sign. which could well stand painting. No, wait a minute. There are a few other signs in the town, in this man's town, which could well stand painting. So, yeah.
Joe, do you know where their coal yard was?
Not sure.
Okay.
Not sure. I mean, they had, the Ray brothers and the Gilmore had a coal yard over on Dean Avenue. Oh,
I think it was where Franklin Auto Service was.
where Franklin Auto Service was.
That was a coal bin.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yeah, because exactly. Okay. Yep. It was on where Franklin Auto and next to the Bulletin block.
Yep.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, John. And then in 1967, it was announced that a steam train was going to pass through Franklin. So I got my home movie camera out, the old Super 8. I used to channel my Stanley Chilson when I was younger, you know. And the train went through, and as I was going like this, I said, it's Bulletin. So I caught the sign that was there back in 1967. And today, that block, the Rome restaurant stands on that block. Yep. So,
And the rest is history.
that's right. Anybody got any questions or anything?
Jan.
There was a pain mentioned earlier. There was a pain mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Was that any relation to Payne's Stockyard?
Oh, the horse farm up on East Central Street?
Yeah.
Possibly. I haven't really
don't know
seen it
their
to confirm
history.
that, but
Yeah.
that's a very good question, yeah. Possibly.
Whereabouts on East Central would that have been, the horse?
The horse farm? Near Hunchard's Curve. Does that help you?
Yeah,
No, it wouldn't help you.
a little bit, yeah.
No, as you're going along on East Central Street, you know where Magnolia Heights is today? Exactly right there. That's where there was a big horse farm. It had a big corral, and many times you see Archie Kell galloping along on the horses and everything. Oh, yeah.
I think that's one of the old Red Devils, had their clubhouse there.
Oh, the Red Devils had a clubhouse there?
What's the Red Devils?
Oh, Red Devils? You know what the Red Devils are?
I'm not,
Oh, 1958 or so, they came up with a club for cars, like hot rods in those days. Today they're antiques. And they had a little license plate they would put on the back, underneath. It said Red Devils. It was a nice little red plate.
oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I know one of the best
Johnny.
Any other questions or comments? Criticisms? No?
That coal yard, where was that now, next to Franklin Auto, you said?
Yeah, you remember Joe Vendetti had the garage right there on Union Street?
Yeah,
with the Mercury dealership.
Yeah, the Mercury dealership, right.
Okay.
Right across from Jimmy D's,
Yeah.
right there. Yeah. In fact, there's a hill that it kind of goes down, and the garage that was there, I can remember as a kid, the service bay was in the back. You had to go around the back, and then to get to the front of the store, you had to go up this ramp like a catwalk. And then there was another catwalk up top. And I remember as a kid, I used to go up and down into this. And that, so, yeah, it was in that area. Yeah. Any other questions? No. I guess that's it. Thank you for coming.
Folks, thank you very much.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.